This is just something I wanted to capture so that we have for posterity. A little interview.
Oh.
So, well, first of all, who are you?
My name is Jerry Lemon.
Yeah. All right. When were you born? When were you born? When?
December 28th, 1941.
Wow. And where were you born and raised?
Bessemer, Alabama.
Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you call home? What did you call home? What is home to you?
Well, I was basically raised till I was 12 years old in Alabama.
Yeah.
And moved to California. My dad had to move out there because of health reasons. And I stayed out there 27 years. Met my wife. We got married. And about 8 years later, while I was working for Honda, they transferred me to Atlanta. But prior to that, I ran my own business, TV shop.
Where was that in California?
Bell Gardens.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't go back out there now unless I was heavily armed. But they transferred me to Atlanta to work in the training center.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there for 3 or 4 years. Got an offer to go to work for Isuzu.
So Honda and then Isuzu.
Went from Honda to Isuzu, and I stayed with Isuzu 21 years.
When did that start with Isuzu?
1981.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry. 1980 is when we actually started. September 1980. We opened a training center January 1981.
In Atlanta?
Uh-huh.
And well, let me come back to when you were younger. So you say Alabama is where you grew up.
Yeah.
What was your first car?
My first car?
Yeah.
1938 Oldsmobile.
Wow. Bet you that was fun.
Well, I couldn't drive it on the road because I didn't have a license yet, nor insurance. So I fixed it up. It was a neat car, just a little flathead motor in it, and I traded it to a guy for a 40 with a long humpback type 48 Chevrolet, and then I sold that, and I had already went to work for a radio and TV shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a 1954 ranch wagon, Ford, station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought that from him. Tried to do the hot rod trick on it, fix it all up and everything. And any way you could, it was Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And then I only had it about a year and a half. And I sold it, or traded it. No, I traded it in on a 56 Chrysler Windsor.
Chrysler Windsor?
Yeah.
When was that? How old were you?
By then,
Yeah.
probably 19.
Wow.
And right along there, I can't remember the exact date, I started a shop, radio and TV repair shop.
In California?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was at one time, not that time, I was a lot younger then. I was at one time the youngest licensed TV repairman in the state of California.
Dang.
And of course that didn't last long because TV's changed so drastically. TV shops were coming and going like crazy. So I started my own shop, and in 63 or 64, I bought a new Dodge van, and for a delivery pickup truck. And about a week later, got my draft notice. So I went down to the draft place in Los Angeles, and since friends of mine that I had graduated with, there's about 4 or 5 of us down there at once, and every one of them was drafted except me.
Wow.
I had trouble with my back and stomach problems.
Wow.
And they sent me home. Never did hear from them again.
Wow.
Which I didn't care.
No, that's amazing.
This was during Vietnam when it was the worst.
late 60s or
no, it was the early 60s.
early
It
60s.
would have been right in the middle. They every one went to Vietnam, and luckily every one of them came back.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing.
But the guy that gave me my physical at the drafts board thing down there, he said, we won't go, he said, chances are you won't see no heavy stuff. They're going to use your brains instead of your hands and feet. Because every one of us had a lot of electrical training.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the government was looking for. They didn't have a lot of people
Back then. Yeah.
back then.
Mm.
But I stayed at the TV shop until 1970. And it was the TV business just dropped. I mean, just nothing was going on.
What turned you on to Honda then?
Oh, I decided I was going to find another job, just close the shop up.
Yeah.
Then I was sitting there reading the newspaper, had an ad in it that says Honda was looking for a electro, let me think what they called it, electro-hydraulic technician. And I called down there and talked to the people that do the hiring.
Yeah.
And they set me up with an interview. And I went and interviewed in February of '71. And they hired me that same week. I went to work for them. Worked till 1980. Worked in the engineering department.
That's pretty amazing to get a job like that.
Yeah.
That's not the way it happens today.
No.
No.
A lot of my friends that was there, of course, have passed on. The guy that hired me died this past December.
Wow.
Tony, in which he was just like a brother to me. And he'd only been at Honda for 6 months. When we started, there were only like 18 people in the whole automotive division.
Really?
Nationwide.
In California and Honda.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, it's there's probably 1,800 now.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of people.
A lot. It's a big company.
Good company. Good company. And the opportunity came to go with Isuzu. I wouldn't have been traveling so much in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And my hire date was November 1980. And our first class was in January of '81.
And what did you start doing there at Isuzu?
Training.
And training.
Teaching.
Teaching other people.
To other mechanics.
Other mechanics.
Yeah.
At the facility in Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
And you trained for, God, that's like 40 years.
No.
No? 30 years?
They,
When did you stop?
2001.
2001. Okay. So 20 years.
Uh-huh.
Well, you trained the rest of us for the next 20.
Yeah. For you guys for the next one.
Yeah.
I've been messing with them for basically 40 years.
I have to ask, is anybody in the, let's say in the traditional sense, back in the 80s and 90s, does anybody stand out or that you've trained, or is any particular stories or people stand out from?
There would be a lot, but I can't remember all of them.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good mechanics out there that after they came to school, especially with the Isuzus, they were trying to work on them using regular conventional methods. And you couldn't do it because they were diesels. Most of the guys had never had any experience with diesels.
The early ones, yeah.
The early ones. And a lot of them stayed the whole 20 years.
Oh, yeah?
Working on them at the dealers. And when Isuzu finally shut down, some of the guys, I still hear from them. I talked to one of the guys here just a while back down in Florida, and he's still kicking. He's been retired for 10 or 15 years. That he worked for a dealer down there in right outside of Jacksonville, and he did a lot of training himself in the dealership.
Oh, yeah?
And that was very common. when I couldn't get to there, I'd send them the books. They'd have a class, but I trained all over the country.
The people at the dealership would train the other mechanics.
Right.
I think I've run into a few like Kurt, right?
Yeah.
Out in South Carolina.
Kurt was in was in my classes at Honda.
Yeah.
And after I went
Both?
to Isuzu,
Wow.
Isuzu, he was coming down there all the time.
Wow.
He used Vic Bailey Honda, and then it was Vic Bailey Isuzu.
I remember, you know the Facebook Marketplace where people buy and sell stuff? A guy come to my house to buy something, and he looks at the Trooper, and he says, I used to work on those. And his name was Ted. And I asked him if he knew Jerry Lemon, and he said he did. He said, you trained him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got a picture of him somewhere. I don't remember the guy's last name. Frazier, maybe?
It's hard to
might
tell.
Have been.
I wished a lot of times that I would have had a ledger that when everybody came to school, had them signing in and the date, or whatever.
Almost like a book, like a yearbook.
Yeah.
I was going to see if you could ever come up with a list of as far as like mechanics that you trained that are still in business, like Kurt and Creech over here.
Yeah, Stan Creech.
Yeah.
That's Van, John Van.
Stan Creech
was
in a lot of my classes, and he was a great help because at that Pontiac, he was at a Pontiac dealer, and we always had to have classes upstairs, and he'd always help me get the stuff upstairs. He'd fuss about the dealerships having to haul the stuff up. So why don't you put some stuff blah 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 down here? Because we'd take transmissions upstairs, tear them all apart, put them back together, and haul them back down, put them in the truck, and I'd go somewhere else.
Man.
But at one time, in the early 80s, my areas for training, if you drew a line on a U.S. map, it would reach from the Louisiana, Texas line all the way to Canada. Everything on the right-hand side was mine, and everything on the left-hand side was a guy by the name of Bill Stewart, who's retired. He worked for Isuzu, and he was the training instructor out there. Well, when they started expanding, the Atlanta area only covered 4 or 5 states. Louisiana was covered by Dallas, Texas, and all of the eastern states was covered by a training center in New Jersey. I can't remember the name of the town it was in. And then the rest of the country was covered by the training center they put up in Chicago.
You trained all those guys too?
I trained most all of those guys, prior to the time they put the schools up.
That's amazing. Is the guy Bill? Is he still around?
Who? Bill Stewart?
Yeah.
Yes, he is. He is.
Wow.
He's told me one day, he was down there in Atlanta. He had been promoted to, he was the lead engineer for the engineering department. We was in the hallway and he says, why don't you come to work for me? I said, Bill, my wife would kill me for sure. She'd shoot me.
To go back to California?
To go back to California. He said, well, if you ever change your mind, there's a job opening. And after everybody retired, or they shut down, and everybody retired, he called me up, says, I want you to do me a favor, okay? Because he actually worked at Honda for a while. Worked in a shop. And so we got along great. I got along good with everybody. I didn't have no problem with nobody. And he called me he was living in New Mexico. He said, I need a truck. He said, I'm driving this little old Isuzu and it's about to kill me. He said, if you can find one, I need an old Ford that's good in shape, preferably with a flatbed on it. I said, well, I'll see if I can find something. I never could. Finding a work truck that's in good shape is pretty rough, you know what? You know that yourself. Yeah. So
because they're for work.
They're for work, and they usually get the living daylights beat out of them. And then he sold out in the last. Then he called me one day. He says he'd moved to the northwest corner of Montana.
Wow.
He's not very far. He's not very far from Canada. And I called him and was talking to him one day, here 3-4 years ago when we went on. Then and my wife went on our vacation where we was going all over everywhere.
That's right. I remember you told me. Yeah.
And I called Bill to see where he was at, and I told him we was down in not Biloxi,
Billings.
Billings.
Yeah.
He said,
or
"Oh
Bozeman.
man," he said, "you got to come and see me." And I said, "Well, how far is it?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "It's about 400 miles, and you're still in Montana."
Yeah.
And I said, "If I can talk my wife into it," I said, "I'm gonna come up and see you," because he was a great guy.
Wow.
And I still see him, hear him on the what you call it there.
The email. Or,
The email.
Yeah, he emails you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I still keep in touch with some people. I only have a few questions. This one I think might be a tough one. If you could go back to the start of your career and give yourself some advice, like if you could talk to a younger you, whether it was when you were a teenager, or Honda or Isuzu, what advice would you give
Go
yourself?
back to school and get an engineering degree.
Go get an engineering degree. That's funny.
had-
Probably me too. Probably me too.
I
like
had
to tinker.
an associate of arts degree in electronics,
Oh yeah.
but I never did get it.
Oh.
Something happened because I didn't have enough classes for them just to hand me the degree.
Got it.
I had electronics, and that was it. I didn't have all of the other classes that go with that.
All of the, what do you call that? The points and curriculum to
Yeah.
get the full diploma. For
I didn't have the money to go to school and work at the same time, so I never did do it. But I kept in touch with the instructors.
Oh yeah.
They said, if you ever need a problem, something to do with you going to school, you know where we're at. And a couple of the instructors knew that I was working at home. After I had went to work for Honda, I had a little garage set up. I lived up close to the San Gabriel Mountains, and they'd bring their cars up there, and I'd work on them. And I was always interested in doing engine swaps. Something that didn't belong in it.
Oh no, creative.
Creative, yeah. And
Kind of like that Dodge van.
yeah,
You were working on for.
I put a 350 Chevrolet one time. And the main instructor, the guy that ran LA Trade Tech College, I put a 350 Chevrolet with a 4-speed in a Toyota Cressida, a little 4-door sedan. You talk about a sleeper.
Yeah, that's a sleeper.
And
That'd be a lot of fun to drive.
And
Cressida.
one of the other guys, and one of the directors, I put a 427 Chevy in I think it was about it was the old Chevy pickup that had the fenders that went like this, and the headlights.
The little flare side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a 3/4 ton truck.
Yes.
And he said that thing couldn't get out of its own way with that 283 in it. So I took it all out. It was a 4-speed, and put a 427 in it.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
I woke it up.
it woke it up. It'd go over the ridge route like it ain't nobody's business.
That's funny.
And that was the only ones I did from the school there, except one of the other teachers there had a Dodge motorhome. And he said, that thing can't get out of its own way. And I popped the hood on it and looked in there and I said, well, no wonder. I said, that thing got a 2-barrel 318 in it. And he said, well, they told me it had a 413 engine in it, which was a typical motorhome engine for those things. So
Sure.
big motorhome.
Back then,
I
yeah.
said, no. I said, somebody was pulling your chain. And he said, is there anything we can do with this to hop it up a little bit to give it more power? Yeah. So I changed the cam in it and put a cam out of a 340, a set of headers, and a 4-barrel carburetor. And it helped it a lot.
Yeah, that's.
But it still wasn't it was just 100 cubic inches smaller.
Yes.
And that was it wasn't long after that I went to work for Honda. Well, I was already working for Honda at that time. I was just doing this in my spare time. What spare time I had.
That's amazing. I got like career or personal. What are you the most proud of? Like, or both?
I guess working in the engineering department at Honda for so long,
Yeah.
I had some great people to work with. Couldn't be no better. One of them just passed away, Yoshi. But we had more fun. Me and him had more fun. He just died here a while back. The guy that actually hired me died about a week before he did. And I was at a real loss.
Oh, yeah.
But the main guy that I had to work with, Mike Nitz, he's still around. And I went to see him when we went on our vacation. And he's been retired for quite a few years. But he was the head engineer at Honda. And he came to work in 1974 when we were building a race car, a little Honda Civic race car.
Bet that was fun.
It was. And me and a guy, I'll mention his name, probably won't be no problem, but he owns Vortex Superchargers now.
Oh, yeah?
Jim Middlebrook.
Hmm.
We worked together in a shop building a little N600 for a Baja car.
That sounds like fun.
It was. And Jim, he was a racer, road racer. And he bought one of the cars there one time. It was a test car. And modified it to go road racing with. And then he started, after I left Honda, he had left. He left before I did. And he started that supercharger company. It is big. Vortex.
Oh, yeah. But you say you're proud of working for Honda Engineering. It sounds like fun. It's no longer work when it's fun.
No, it's not fun. I enjoyed going to work. I drove 50 miles each way.
That's the kind of best job to have when you enjoy going.
Yep. I got along good with the Japanese guys. I did a lot of road travel with them. Engineering stuff.
Yeah.
And we can mention, I guess, the conversion that they brought over. It was a Chevrolet V8. They converted it over to CVCC cylinder heads.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always told everybody, a hot rodder in this country would have died for the parts that was on that car.
Oh, yeah?
Because the engine, all aluminum heads, aluminum intake manifold, but it didn't have any exhaust manifolds on it. There weren't any. The exhaust went out underneath the intake manifold and curved and went out the back and over the back like that.
Wow.
And somebody says, well, where was the distributor? I said, that's the reason somebody would kill for it. It was up front.
Yeah, where you can...
Probably the only Chevrolet V8 ever built that had a front-mounted distributor.
Interesting. From the top or straight in?
No, from the top.
From the top.
You just sit down and look, kind of like a Ford does.
Mm.
And that was the most beautiful machine work you ever seen in your life.
Mm.
And when they sent the car over, they sent a big wooden box full of spare parts. You ought to have seen some of these parts that were all individually handmade for that particular car.
For that engine?
Uh-huh.
Going back to Isuzu's, since you 21 years, right?
Mm-hmm. 21 years.
And then ever since, it's been kind of an oddball community. Did you ever expect it to continue like it did after the Isuzu exit from the U.S. market?
No.
No?
They're still, of course, they're still in business worldwide, but they just pulled out of the United States parts for support for the smaller vehicles, and all the dealers are just. There was a lot of the dealers kept the trucks, the heavy duty trucks.
Yeah, commercial.
Commercial trucks, yeah.
And then, what do you think did it? Do you think it was that Consumer Report about the rollovers?
No, it was not.
What do you think did it? The Isuzu's exit.
2 letters, and I'll leave it at that. General Motors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's one of my next questions. Is everybody says, "Oh, Isuzu's just GM or it's Honda," and a lot of people think the 3.2 engine's a Honda engine.
No, they're not.
And then the the only GM was the transmission, the 4L30 and the 2.8 and the
correct.
3.1. And then what did they do? Did they send the blocks over to Japan? How did they get the 2.8s and the 3.1s and the 4L30s in those troopers?
They were shipped over into Japan. The 4L30s, I don't know, they would probably come right from Strasbourg, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But the engines, the 2.8s and the 3.1s, I asked one of the engineers there one day, Mr. Ito was his name. I said, why don't they send those trucks over to the U.S. and start an assembly line here at the port to put the 2.8 and the 3.1s in it? Cost too much. And I said, well, they got to ship the engines over, then they ship the car back with them. Not so much cost.
That's
like
interesting.
That. And
how complete was the engine?
ready to drop in.
Ready to drop in.
Yeah.
Everything's bolted. Intake, everything.
They had
Heads.
those engines. I wouldn't have believed it. They had those engines that would fit down in a box about, I'm guessing 20 inches across by 21 inches and maybe 20 inches deep. You know how many of those you can get in a 40-foot container?
A bunch.
A bunch.
A bunch.
Because he said they cost less than $5 each to ship them over there.
With the water pump and everything.
Everything
Intake,
on them, ready to drop
heads,
it in and hook
valve
it up.
covers, oil
Yeah.
pan, everything.
Complete engine.
Flywheel or nothing?
No, there was no
just
fly.
back and the crank and that's
because
it?
the flywheels would have went with the transmission.
Got it. That's interesting. What about, do you know anything about the Isuzu V8?
Very little. I do know it existed, but I've seen some pictures of it a long time ago, and it was basically let me think a minute now. It was basically the newer 3.5 with 2 more cylinders, and I never saw it. I saw pictures of it or sketches, engineering drawings. And if you think about it, if you look at the later model Trooper, take the front fan off of it and the fan shroud and see how much room you got up there.
Oh, so it could have been.
It could have been drawn.
2005, 2006 could have been.
Yep.
With a 3.5 GDI.
Yep. And it fit because on the engines that's in there now, there's plenty of room to add 2 more cylinders there.
Nah.
The only thing I know about them. A friend of mine who was working in the field as a field engineer, they had 2 trucks in California. And don't ask me where they went because I don't know. That had those engines in them, and they said they was having some problems with them. The 2 rear cylinders running hot, and that was the end of it. Nobody.
You never heard of it?
Never heard of them since.
Another mythical creature would be the Via Cross. Everybody loves them, but there's a convertible and there's a 4-door. Have you seen those?
Just pictures of them.
Just pictures of them.
The only weird one I seen, and they said, "Oh, the thing doesn't have an engine in it." Well, that was bull crap. They built one. I forget what they called that thing, because I drove it. I know what it was. It was a off-roader, had great big tires and wheels on it. And they brought it to our training center there in Atlanta for a car show. And it didn't have no brakes on it. I don't know that they didn't have the physical parts of them, but they wouldn't have no brakes on them. You push your pedal down, it didn't do nothing.
Didn't go.
And the guy wouldn't unload it, the truck. He was scared of it.
Oh.
Because it had a 3.5 with an automatic in it. And he said, "I'm not going to drive that thing off there." He said, "I'll drive it off there and the thing take off." I said, "Get out of the way." It was a 2-door, if I remember correctly. This was like 93, 94, somewhere along in there, long before the Via Cross came out.
Long before.
And I got up in there, cranked the thing up, fired right off. And I just put it into reverse and started backing out and backing out. And I just pulled it back down into drive, and I need to slow down. And went down the ramp and unloaded it in the back parking lot, and then drove it up into the shop, and then I just put it back up in the reverse right quick. Because it was, and then pull the handbrake up.
Oh man.
But it was a green one. It was It was a better looking truck than the Vehicross. It didn't have that blind spot in it.
Really?
You know, like the Vehicross has at the
Sure.
corners.
Yeah, I never heard about that.
And that was the last I ever seen of it. It went to Atlanta to the car show down there. And where it went from there, I don't know.
Was there a name for it, or project name, or any letters?
Yeah, but I don't know what it was.
Don't know.
I did know one of the honchos from somewhere down there. He was mouthing off about it, and because what was neat about it, you pull the latch, you raise the hood up, pull the latch over here, and the whole front fenders swing out,
That's interesting.
and you can just walk right up to the engine.
That is
So
like a show car almost.
yeah, like a custom built car.
I've seen stuff like that at SEMA.
But that car did exist with an engine in it. The guy says,
And it drove.
and it drove.
Just didn't have brakes.
It just didn't have any brakes. I think the brakes just leaked down, or it didn't have any oil in them, or something.
Maybe. We've talked about a lot of things, you and I, about Isuzu overbuilt some things or over-engineered. Is there something that stands out from the 80s or 90s that you thought was ahead of its time, or just neat or different that they were doing?
Oh.
I mean, besides those lovely CV axles that are a pain to replace, or the GDI, I felt like that was kind of
the
early.
axles are no different than any other front-wheel drive, if that's what you're talking about. You know, the CV axles?
Yeah.
Because it used to be, we'd get complaints all the time on front-wheel drive cars. Even our front-wheel drive cars, guys complaining about, they're too hard to get the axles out.
They are hard. They're fun.
If they were easy, they wouldn't stay in there. They'd come out.
Makes you wonder why they didn't go to like a flange design,
Yeah.
like some of the GM, the Blazers.
One word.
What's that?
Cost.
Cost.
One word, cost. Because most of the GM stuff, you know, they have a fan bolted into the transmission and the axle bolts to it.
Yes.
I think VW's made something like that.
Was it,
What I would have liked to have seen, and I think it was a shame that we lost them, was the later model, like Van's truck, 94, 95 Space Cab pickup.
a pickup? Oh yeah.
Because
With a 4x4.
4x4, it needed a better transmission. It needed an automatic transmission in it. I got aggravated at one of the sales guys one time. I said, "Why don't you tell them we need an automatic transmission in these pickups?" Well, who's going to buy a four-wheel drive pickup with an automatic transmission? Well, probably nobody, unless you're a Nissan or a Toyota customer, prospect. Because you go down there to the Toyota dealer,
They have them.
and you'll have 550 of them on the lot. Way more than you're going to have manual shifts. Nissan's the same way. Mazda's the same way. But we don't have four-wheel drive automatic pickup trucks. Well, I just don't think he was. He was an idiot anyways. I don't even know what his name was. But because that truck was used in a lot of different variances in other countries.
Yes.
Four-door.
They even have a 1-ton. And
Even had a one-ton,
Yeah.
yes.
what? Tell me the story. Why did the Isuzu have to switch from the ASIN to the 4L30 and then back to the ASIN? Cost.
Yep.
It wasn't because GM was covering some of the bills and
No.
Subaru or any of that.
Nope. Just strictly cost per unit.
Just cost.
And it wasn't a whole lot.
Wow. Yeah.
And they just, that Asian Warner for our vehicles, it wasn't just for our vehicles. You know, we ever so often we'd need parts. You go down to Toyota and get them.
Toyota had the same one.
Transmission.
Yes.
But overall, that transmission for what it was used for was bulletproof. I would still love to have had one. The pickup trucks, even if it was a two-wheel drive with the 4-speed AW transmission in it, even though it would have been a two-wheel drive. It'd
be great.
It's still a nice truck.
Oh yeah.
But the pickup, just like some of the other trucks, or like that, you know, like the early Troopers, the 2.6 worked fine, but the truck was still heavy. You know, we're looking at a nearly 4,000-pound truck with an engine that should be in a 2,800-pound vehicle.
Yeah, for sure. You had me thinking, how many two-wheel drive second-gen troopers exist?
Oh, I don't know.
Not many?
Not many.
Like 5, 2, 10?
Oh, it'd be more than that.
More?
Yeah.
But less than 100 maybe.
A couple hundred probably. Yeah. I get emails every day.
With the 4030 or the ASIN? When did they have the two-wheel drive?
Oh,
with the ASIN?
Oh, you mean with the automatics?
Yeah, with the either one, automatic or the AR5, with the two-wheel drive only.
Well, the early troopers didn't ever have the AR5.
That's right. It was MUA5.
It had the MUA. That's all they put in.
And then the MSGs.
And that was so overkill.
Yes.
That MUA was actually used with the 4-cylinder and the small V6s. And then they used it in the big trooper, the UX trooper.
And then switched to AR5. What do you think was a beat? Why did they switch to AR5? Just wondering. And the troopers 98, 99, right?
It was just overkill. Have you ever seen a trooper if everything's working right and run hot?
Well, I've got an AR5, but I don't have a trooper.
Like my trooper.
Yeah, your troopers.
You ever seen one run hot going down a highway?
No. Just overbuilt.
It's so overbuilt.
Yeah.
The only thing that it wouldn't have hurt to have a little bit bigger brakes, because that's a heavy truck.
Yes, the second and third gens those are big.
My truck weighs 4,800 pounds, bone stock. I got a big old trailer hitch on the back, and all the junk I carry in it weighs about 5,400 pounds, and it still stops good. But it would have been better to have larger brakes on it, but they put what was adequate.
Like a 2-piston, just a bigger piston,
yeah.
bigger rotors, something.
Bigger rotors.
Yeah.
But I about scared my brother to death one day with it. We was going to a show somewhere over on the East Coast, and all of a sudden there was a Jeep Cherokee stopped in front of us, and I mean she was stopped, and I nailed the brakes on that thing. I was in there, my brother was in the front seat, and both wives was in the back seat, and I hollered, "Hang on!" and I stood on those brakes for all it was worth.
And the ABS worked.
And the ABS kicked in and it worked, and I stopped about a foot behind that damn Wagoneer.
Oh man!
He says, "Whew, man, that thing's got some brakes on it, don't it?" And I said, "It did that time."
Oh man, could be better.
But they built parts that was adequate for the vehicle. It wasn't overkill, but it wasn't underkill. It wasn't under stress.
And the same axles and the same brakes went overseas, and the diesels.
I don't know for sure, but I would say yeah. I know they used the same 12-bolt in the pickups. They were the same, and I believe the 12 bolts like the trooper used.
Yeah, but maybe different gearing, of course.
Just different gearing.
The RPMs, and
yeah,
and disc front and rear.
Bigger disc in the front.
Trying to think if anything else stands out. 04 was the last year of the Trooper. We had a V-Across for a couple years. We had an RS and
02 was the last year of the Trooper.
02 was 04 was a rodeo then.
02 was a rodeo, and
Axiom. That's what I'm missing.
Axiom.
It's the Axiom. That's right.
04 or 05 was the last year of it. And it was a 1 year only.
With the ASIN, and before that was the 4030, and they never had a stick shift Axiom.
No. The Axiom came with a standard 3.5 engine in it, and also that 3.5 DI motor, which was kind of a mistake. It just didn't have enough time for testing, and they had some problems out of them. But all of the Axioms had the Ace and Warner transmission in them. I got one sitting in my backyard now that belongs to a friend of mine that something happened to that right-hand bank oiling system, and he said, "I'm not going to fix it again." He said, "You can have it." He said, "Just save me the transmission," because he had just had a transmission fixed, or he fixed it himself. And I said, "Okay," and it's still sitting there. I ain't never bothered it.
Oh, I pulled a two-wheel drive transmission out of an Axiom, and I gave it to Garrett years ago.
Yeah. Well, this was a two-wheel drive.
Yeah, because there's two-wheel drive, and it was ASIN. I remember that. And he was going to use it. He's using transmissions for lots of projects.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about what would be a good, do you think would be the good combination if you were to put any combination engine, transmission, or axles from a Trooper, Rodeo, Axiom for strength and reliability? If you could just put them together like a jigsaw puzzle.
The 3.5 engine with the Asian Warner transmission out of the Axiom and four-wheel drive. Put that in the pickup truck. The TF, what they call the TF pickup truck, 95. Space cab.
Yes.
Put it in a space cab four-wheel drive. And you got a 290 horse. Well, especially if you put a supercharger on it.
Wow.
Like somebody else I know.
And a pickup.
You know who I'm talking about. You got about 280, 290 horsepower.
There's only a few of those superchargers running around.
And the transmission, the Asian would easily handle it. And you got a four-wheel drive, got a pickup truck, and it's a space cab. You got plenty of room for 4 people.
Yep.
And that truck will run, 250,000 miles with no problem.
And 12-bolt rear, 10-bolt
rear,
front,
10-bolt front.
without those unit bearings, regular hubs.
Yep.
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 That's awesome.
My Trooper just turned over 237,000 miles with 137 of them with that supercharger on it.
What all have you had to do to it?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I put one set of spark plugs in it, and right now it needs a set of valve cover gaskets because they're dripping. Other than that, that engine has never been touched.
I think that truck's probably afraid to break down because it lives with you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's all I can think of. I wanted to ask you a few questions, record them for posterity, and there's usually a couple rumors we have to dispel, and so you've done it. I've learned it quite a bit.
Well, that main rumor we'll dispel, give you a little more information on it. I've heard about that Honda building those engines. I talked to Mike, my ex-cohort at Honda, who was the lead engineer. When we was on our trip, we went to see him, and I said, Mike, got a question for you. What do you know about Honda building the Isuzu V6s? They didn't. Honda built 3.5 V6s, and they were very similar in design.
It wasn't the same motor.
But it was not the same engine.
Different block, everything.
Different block. Nothing on that motor would interchange. I said, that's what I told these guys.
That's what everybody gets confused with, that Passport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, they were talking about the 3.5s, 3.2s, and the Passport. He said, we had nothing to do with them other than just, the only thing Honda did was buy them. They bought the trucks.
With a badge on top of the intake.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was it.
Yep. Well.
But there's all kinds of rumors get around like that.
No, for sure. Some people.
Somebody said, oh, all the other car companies have the engines built or assembled by so and so. It didn't happen. Not with Honda and Isuzu. Honda's a big company, and Isuzu is the biggest diesel company in the world. Honda's probably the biggest gasoline manufacturer engine in the world.
Wish we can get a D-Max. Or like the Australian, what are those, MUXs?
Yeah.
Wish we could get one of those.
Yep.
Those things are nice. It'd be many years before we can get one.
Well, they make some of the prettiest four-wheel drive pickup trucks you ever seen.
Oh yeah.
With diesels in them.
Yeah, hang it up there. Well, I think I'm done. Jay, if there's anything else I can think of, we'll catch some more tomorrow.
Okay.
But thank you.
We'll be here.
We'll say bye.